Hello everyone and welcome to Ad Q&A Live episode 18. I'm Nick Sinitra and today we are talking about starting from square one. So what do I mean by that? Specifically, I'm talking about if you are a small business and you are just starting out advertising online for the very first time, what is the media mix and what are sort of the steps that you might take to bootstrap yourself up and start getting your campaigns rocking and rolling. So for this, what I'm going to do is actually kind of run through in a spreadsheet a little bit of a recommended media mix and ROAS and so forth that you might expect and how everything is connected. So as you start to scale up one piece, you start to see better in performance on other pieces and so forth. So let's go ahead and transition to the screen share mode here and I will start to walk you through it. All right, so here we go. So I'm going to pull this up and we are going to start into it. Cool. Okay, so once again, the idea here, just ignore all the channels for now and we're going to walk through it step by step. The idea is, let's say you have started a business and your business is, let's say for the sake of argument, that you're making socks for puppies. Something weird, something maybe people aren't looking for. You haven't started doing any digital marketing whatsoever. You've got your manufacturer, you've got all your shipping and everything sorted out. You've got yourself a website. Everything is in place. And you're ready to start getting traffic to your site and you're ready to start making money via paid media. And so what's your approach? Okay, so this is going to make a few assumptions. Again, like I said, it assumes that you got your website, the website is working, that it's converting, you got all the payment methods in place that need to be in there and all that stuff. So first things first, right? Like we said, you need to first of all let people know that you exist, right? Assuming there hasn't been any PR, media, what have you, so nobody knows that you're out there. This is part of the reason why you're running the paid media. Step number one is to get your name out there and let people know that you exist. Now, when you're doing this, of course, the hope and the expectation is that you are going to start getting people to your site. So let's think about this as sort of step one, prospecting, right? Branding, prospecting, we're going to kind of use these interchangeably. So there's a lot of different channels that you could run on, but just for the sake of argument, let's talk about kind of the two biggest, most no-brainer ones. So you've got Facebook, right? And the strategy here being prospecting. So this would be things like interest-based targeting. You don't have any purchase data yet, presumably, so you can't really build a lookalike off of previous purchasers, but you've got, interest, behavior, that kind of stuff, right? So for starters, this stuff is all going to depend on your different, capabilities as far as how much budget you've got to throw around, how much have you got in the bank and all that. So let's say for the sake of argument, and we can do this kind of on a daily basis, right? That you're willing to spend up to $100 a day on prospecting, okay? And in terms of return on ad spend, for starters, remember, you're just starting this for the very first time. So let's be conservative and assume that you're not gonna make 100% ROAS, that you're probably only gonna make back 50 cents on the dollar because it's gonna take some time to kind of test and figure out what's working best. Remember, you have no historical precedent right now for what's gonna be a high-performing creative. And that's part of the reason that you would hire an agency like AdQuadrant, for instance, is that they are gonna have some best practices already. But let's say you do your homework, you do some research, you read what Facebook and Google and so forth have to say about best practices from a creative standpoint, but there's still some learning period there to take into consideration. Here's one thing, like one quick anecdote I'll give you about online advertising. There was a movie called Central Intelligence that came out a while back. I never saw the movie. It's got The Rock, it's got Kevin Hart, but I remember this quote from the trailer that I thought was funny, where basically Kevin Hart hasn't seen The Rock's character in a long time. And when they were friends in high school, The Rock's character was like a pretty, overweight guy, right? And so Kevin Hart is like, man, you lost 200 pounds. What happened? And The Rock, of course, now super jacked, right? Basically says, all I did was one thing. And Kevin Hart is like, wow, amazing. What did you do? And he said, with a straight face, I worked out 6 hours a day, every day for 20 years. Basically the same thing with online advertising, right? There's no getting around the work. There's no magic I win button. There's a way to load the deck, load the dice, stack the deck. There's, strategies that you can employ, but nothing's ever a sure bet. There's always going to be elbow grease that has to go into it to get it to work. So with all that in mind, again, let's start with a 50% return on ad spend. So I'll kind of explain as we go along what this is, but basically what I'm going to do here is kind of show a progression over time of how your aggregate performance is going to vary based on your marketing mix and efficiency improvements and so forth that you're making as you go along. Anyway, stick with me, it'll all make sense. So for starters, right, day one, you start spending on Facebook, prospecting. Let's say you're targeting people with pet interests, right? And you're spending $100 a day and you're making $50, right? 50% return on ad spend. And let's say at the same time you say, you know what, I'm going to bid on some non-brand terms. Nobody knows my brand name yet, right? It's, whatever, Nick's Puppy Socks. Nobody knows that's a thing, right? So nobody's searching for my brand term yet because they don't know that I exist. So for now, I'm just going to do brand terms like, puppy socks, right? Probably super low search volume because it's kind of a niche thing, but let's say that, there's other people out there doing this, and so there is a bit of search volume. So let's say for the sake of argument that I can spend $50 a day on the non-brand terms, and maybe this one, because there's higher intent, because it's Google search, right? And I'm not just throwing my name out there and people are actually looking for puppy socks. Let's say that the baseline return on ad spend is actually a little bit higher. It's 75%, not 50%. So where am I at so far? Right now, all in, every day I'm spending $150 and I'm getting back 105 for a 70% return on ad spend. And of course, with all of this, I'm not counting my own time, right, which is a significant factor, but something to think about. Now, as I am starting to get people to my site, assuming I've got all my tracking pixels set up, refer back to info card here for retargeting and maybe another info card, wait for it, customer journey, right? Let's start to think about those kind of touch points. But as people start to come to my site and I start to retarget them, this is where I'm going to start to get the best returns. Remember, we said the dollar for dollar retargeting campaigns, and especially things like DPA, are going to be your real money makers. But the problem at first, right, remember I've only been spending for a couple of days, is that we're only talking about maybe a few dozen or maybe 100 people that are getting to my site. So initially my retargeting pool is really small. Maybe I can only spend, I don't know, 10 or 20 bucks a day. However, right, given the fact that, let's say I'm retargeting people who have added to cart but not purchased, my baseline return on ad spend is significantly higher than what I'm seeing for my sort of branding and prospecting campaign. So let's say it's 200%, right out of the gate. Cool. All right, so where am I at? Well, that helped a little bit. Right now I'm spending 160 bucks a day and I'm getting back 129 for an aggregate 81% ROAS. And at the same time that people are getting back to my site, now people are starting to hear about Nick's Puppy Socks so that I can now spend a little bit of money on brand terms as well. And let's just say from a return on ad spend perspective, it's comparable to retargeting, right? That if people are, again, keep in mind, you got to get kind of get into the psychology of the buyer. If people are looking for me by name, they probably have a higher intent to purchase than one of these prospecting strategies where they're just looking for something general, right? If you think about somebody who's searching for, athletic shoes, right? They literally just search for athletic shoes. It could be anything, right? I could be researching the history of athletic shoes and, who was the first one to make sneakers or, whatever. Was it Nike? Was it Reebok? Who was it? Adidas? Or maybe I'm, looking to actually buy, right? There's no qualifying terms in there necessarily, depending on how I'm bidding on the term for like best athletic shoes or cheapest athletic shoes, best bang for the buck, where can I buy, how much are, stuff like that, right? People are just searching for athletic shoes. Now with brand terms though, people are looking for a specific thing. So yeah, I mean, conceivably they could be trying to learn more about your business, but realistically, brand terms tend to be higher performers like retargeting because people are looking for your specific thing with the intent to buy, or at least to research prices further and so forth. Okay, so sorry for the aside there, but now here's what you're looking at. Oh, I forgot to mention, one of the things that's happening here at the same time, I meant to add this in later, but we will talk about it now, is we've talked before about maximizing the area under the curve, right? That you are going to get people coming to your site, and some of them are going to convert, and most of them are not, right? So the question is, how can I make the most of the people that are coming to my site? Well, one of the ways that you're going to make the most of them is by retargeting them, right? Remember that not everybody's going to purchase, and the people who don't purchase are going to not purchase for different reasons. For some of them, maybe it's because it was too expensive, right? Again, go back to the sort of BANT, right? Budget, authority, needs, and timing. So you're not necessarily going to know, right? You can assume, you can surmise to a certain extent, but you're not going to know for sure why people aren't buying. There can be a variety of reasons, and you're going to do your best to basically take all those people who are not converting and try again, right? And there's various avenues by which you can try again to get them to convert. So one of them, again, is retargeting. They come to your site, maybe they add something to the cart and they don't purchase. For them, you run a retargeting campaign, you wait a certain amount of time before you spice up the deal with that discount, and then you layer in that, okay, they didn't buy after they visited the site 7 days ago. My puppy socks aren't really that expensive, but if they're not going to purchase in the first 7 days after adding to cart and not purchasing, after day 8, I'm going to start offering 20% off. Now, the other thing I can do is when people get to my site, I could add an email pop-up, right? Interested in exclusive deals and savings. Maybe offer a lead magnet for like fun treats or something that you can do for your dog, or top 10 cool life hacks for your pet, stuff like that. Some lead magnet just to get people's email address. And once you get their email address, then what you can do is you can use something like MailChimp or Klaviyo, for instance, to run an email campaign or a couple different flavors. And this is, again, next week we should have my colleague Cassie coming in and talking about email, but there's a bunch of different sort of campaigns and flows that you can do in email. I'm just simplifying here with like Facebook Messenger, cart abandon, and email welcome series, and a cart abandon email, and all this stuff. I'm just kind of lumping it in, and the assumption I'm making is that, and this is maybe a little aspirational, your mileage may vary, but I'm just making the assumption that whatever amount of revenue I'm generating through everything else I'm doing, that all of these things, the messenger, email, welcome series, cart abandon, and so forth, essentially acts as like a force multiplier that's going to allow me to improve the effectiveness of everything else I'm doing, right? Remember that these things, the messenger, welcome series, cart abandon, and so forth, they're not prospecting strategies, right? The cost of these things tends to be very low, but the return is based on traffic to your site, right? They have no intrinsic value, is what I'm saying. They have value if and only if people are getting to your site and they're opting into those communications, right? And if nobody is getting to your site outside of paid media, then it stands to reason that you've got to spend more on paid media to get them to the site, to get them to opt in, to get them to produce revenue. So that's why, for the purpose of this calculation, I'm basically just saying, okay, whatever amount of revenue you generate from your other sources, be they prospecting, retargeting, what have you, that your messenger, your email is basically going to increase that by a certain percentage. In this case, I'm assuming 20%. Don't quote me on that. It's not set in stone, but there you go. Okay, so this is basically, within, let's say, the first 1 to 2 weeks of launching, assuming I have the budget for it, this is where I'm at. I'm spending 170 bucks a day, and I'm getting 153 bucks in revenue every day for a 90% return on ad spend. So I'm losing money, not good. And I'm spending time doing all this, which is also not good, right? So what can I do? Well, first of all, as time progresses, what you're going to find is that your retargeting pool grows. So the volume of people who have visited your site over the last 7 days or 14 days or 30 days, right, is going to continue to grow as you, over time, right, if it's a 30-day look back, at first nobody was coming to your site. So in that first 30 days, it's just going to naturally grow. It's going to go from 0 to, by day 30, a significantly bigger pool, right? So we know that right away, retargeting is going to go up, right? Let's say that we've 5x this, right? Just by the fact that initially we're retargeting, over the last 7 days, and we're going to go to the last 30 days, right? So we'll 4x it approximately. So let's call this now 40 bucks, okay? So that's one thing. And as more and more people start to come to your site, maybe you're going to increase your volume of brand searches as well. Okay, so let's assume maybe also an increase there. And now you can see I am in the green, right? Just for that one piece, I'm now in the green because I basically significantly increased the portion of revenue that was coming from the retargeting and brand term strategies. Now, this is giving me basically leverage to scale further. So here, if I want to get more people to my site and I want to fill the retargeting pool even further, what I can do is I can start to scale up prospecting. But let's say before I do that, right, I don't want to go deeper in the hole on prospecting, because given that I'm only getting right now a 50% return on ad spend on prospecting, I wouldn't want to take this up to 300, because that just puts me right back in the red, right? Now I'm losing money again. That's not good. What do I want to do first? Assuming I'm spending enough every day to actually do some testing and start to raise the bar, over time, this prospecting ROAS, we want to get closer and closer and closer to 100%. Remember that in an ideal world, We would love to just show somebody, show cold traffic, somebody who has never heard of you before, an ad, and they convert right there on the spot the same day, boom. That's the dream. Everyone wants that. But realistically, unless you're offering something insane or your targeting is super on point, that's usually not going to happen. So a lot of times, again, directionally, what we're really looking at prospecting to do is essentially being a way to buy traffic, right? Buy data, which we're then going to use to retarget. So aspirationally, we're shooting for, sort of 100 as the floor. We would love to get higher than that. But let's say that we finally succeed in getting both the prospecting and non-brand terms up to 100%. Cool. Well, what happens now, right? This is looking good. Now I'm making basically 162% return on ad spend. That's starting to look okay. So now I feel comfortable that I can start scaling this stuff up. Let's say I take prospecting up and double it, right? And I double my non-brand terms to 100, right? And what's going to happen, remember, as we scale, we talked about the reasons for this in a past video. So maybe, how to scale the right way. Maybe we can get an info card up there. But as I scale for a given audience, a lot of times the efficiency is going to go down, at least initially, right? For a given combination of audience and landing page and creative, right? If all I do is spend more, each successive person that I reach is going to be slightly less likely to convert than the one before because of how Facebook's OCPM algorithm works and all that. Not necessarily the case for non-brand terms, so I'm not going to make this effect kick in here, but let's say that this goes down now to 75% as I doubled from 100 to 200, right? Now I'm down from, what was it, 160 something, back down to 129. Well, now my next step is I'm starting to play with creatives, I'm starting to make tweaks to my landing page, I'm starting to do some A/B testing, and I'm able to get this back up to 100%, right? And at the same time, right now, I'm able to spend more on retargeting, right? I'm able to sort of double this on retargeting, and I'm able to double this, spend on brand term searches. Now I'm back up to 162. And you can see that over time, my revenue is growing all the time. Now, where do I want to go from here? I mean, in an ideal world, I'd love to get this 162% up to like a 300% return on ad spend. But you can see that in order to do that, I've got to do one of several different things. Right now, it's basically impossible with the ROAS that I have listed here because, if the ROAS stays at 100 to 200%, even with the additional 20% that I have coming from email, there's no amount of spend that I can throw at it that's going to magically make it turn into 300% ROAS. So what I do need to do is I need to figure out a way to make retargeting more effective, or find a way to make Messenger, email, and so forth even more effective, so that that area under the curve is maximized, right? So here, let's say that, now that I've scaled up to 200%, I start doing some more creative testing and I'm actually able to get this up to 120%, and maybe non-brand terms. I find some really good terms that are high converters and they have low competition. This goes up to 150. I start to do some more creative testing, and maybe I now have enough traffic that I can start running DPA, those dynamic product ads that we talked about in the previous episode, and this goes up to 350. Right? And maybe this goes up to 350 or 400, right? And now I'm at 248, right? And again, it's like, this is kind of where we're talking about. This goes back to, again, maybe we get another info card. We're doing, throwback, flashback Friday, right? We're talking about a lot of the past episodes that we talked about. This is that mountain climber method, right? It's basically building up a solid foundation on each one of these pieces so that you can scale it, right? We're not just talking about basically scaling everything. We're talking about scaling individual components as and when they get to a sufficient level that we can do so without tanking the overall performance, right? So depending on my bandwidth, I mean, if I'm a small business owner, entrepreneur, I'm running all this stuff by myself, you can see that there's a lot of work here. You're talking about running, basically 3 different channels with multiple strategies per channel, managing all the email. It's a lot of work, right? So for all the work I'm putting into this, I might, at this point, maybe I just shouldn't do it at all, right? And again, that's where, consultants and, advertising agencies and, ad platforms, some of the like optimization platforms and stuff start to come into the mix, is helping you become more efficient with your time, get a better return and all this stuff. So from here, this is kind of like a quick high level view, but, again, the point is just to show that it's like a socket wrench, right? A little bit back, a little bit forward, and each time that bolt is getting a little bit tighter, right? And you're getting more zeroed in on where you want to be as a business. So I'm going to make this one a quick one. Oh, it's actually been a little bit longer than I thought. Oops. Let's take that transition back off. All right, so we're at about 20 minutes. I'm going to call it here. Hopefully all that made sense, but hit me up in the comments if you have any questions. Again, as usual, if there's any topics you want us to cover, we're more than happy to talk about it. Give us a like and subscribe if you think this is interesting, entertaining, educational, all that stuff. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. Really appreciate the views. And again, remember, tune in next week. We have Cassie joining us to talk about email, and that's going to be cool. And a little plant a seed. Another one of our team members is going to be talking about the hype cycle. That's going to be really cool. Really, really interesting one. So keep an eye out for that. We're shooting again still for 3 podcasts every week. Stay tuned, and thanks for watching.